Bill Gates is worried about misinformation. Meanwhile, the CDC are not publishing accurate figures around coronavirus. So which misinformation should we be worried about? Hello there, you 5 million awakening wonders. I know there are challenges in this world, but together we can overcome and triumph by being open and willing and honest together. If you want to come and see me live, you can. I'm performing all over the UK. I'm in Newcastle, Nottingham, Sheffield, Scarborough, Stockton-on-Tees, Bristol, Plymouth. There's a link in the description to tickets. Come see me live. I'm hoarse with the craziness of it. Have a look at my Instagram page. There's loads of photos of me meeting people. It's absolute beautiful mayhem, and you can rely on that information. It's not misinformation, because today we're talking about misinformation. Bill Gates is really worried about it, and yet the CDC has admitted that there has been a lack of transparency around the publication of coronavirus related data. Let's get into it. For more than a year, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has collected data on hospitalizations for COVID-19 in the United States and broken it down by age, race and vaccination status, but it has not made most of the information public. When the CDC published the first significant data on the effectiveness of boosters in adults younger than 65 2 weeks ago, it left out the numbers for a huge portion of that population, 18 to 49-year-olds, the group the data showed was least likely to benefit from extra shots because the first 2 doses already left them well protected. 2 full years into the pandemic, the agency leading the country's response to the public health emergency has published only a tiny fraction of the data it's collected, several people familiar with the data said. Now, as yet, we've not gotten into the type of data that was included and the type of data that was omitted, but what you know is already happening is a huge conversation around this subject where some people feel there's a lack of transparency, where the conversation is opaque and veiled. So the revelation that the agency responsible for publishing data has not been publishing all of the data, does that make that argument less relevant or less valid, or does it make it more valid? You know, if you think of the environment we're living in, where there are some people being condemned, people being denied access to public amenities, none of which I have an opinion on because they're all being implemented by governments that are democratically elected, but it's certainly what you want to think is that there is transparency, that you're not on some level being manipulated or lied to, because then their mandate is less valid. Detailed, timely data on hospitalizations by age and race would help health officials identify and help the populations at highest risk. Information on hospitalizations and death by age and vaccination status would have helped inform whether healthy adults needed booster shots. Because what you want to make is informed decisions consensually in relationship with the agencies and authorities that are in charge of your country. Otherwise, what it seems like is they have an agenda. Well, then that's not transparency, is it? Kristen Nordland, a spokeswoman for the CDC, said the agency had been slow to release the different streams of data because basically, at the end of the day, it's not yet ready for prime time. What does that mean, it's not ready for prime time? It's not Grey's Anatomy. It's information. Either it's true or it's not. Uh-oh, I don't like that information. Let's get a bit more lipstick on that information. Let's get those guys a push-up bra. Another reason is fear that the information might be misinterpreted, Ms. Nordland said. Misinterpreted. We do what we like with bloody information. Allow us to interpret it. This is again an example of government overreach. They don't give you information that might lead you to certain conclusions. You can see that the way that language is changing, even the word misinformation itself, a word that just, you know, you'll see a graph of it soon saying, oh, misinformation, no one used to say it. Now, boom, everyone's saying it the whole time, and they get to determine what it is. And we did a video where we showed how misinformation and terror are being conflated, and now the ability to interpret information, where you see contextual warnings with a lot of online information. What that is essentially saying is that you are not intelligent enough to deduce how you should respond to data. Now, if you're anything like me, you're emotional and you might sometimes overreact or underreact or not spot stuff. But what I want is transparency and clarity and openness, and to be treated like an autonomous adult. Not, oh, you won't be able to handle that information, we better redact that. Yeah, you can have that bit of information. We are governed as if we are idiots. Meanwhile, Bill Gates has voiced his opinions on COVID-19 and future pandemics in a new interview. Speaking to CNBC at Germany's annual Munich Security Conference, he said that he believes the world will see another pandemic. In terms of whether it's possible to prevent another pandemic altogether, Gates told CNBC's Hadley Gamble, if every country did what Australia did, then you wouldn't be calling it a pandemic. No, you'd be calling it a prison. Let's see what Bill Gates has got to say now, the Crazy old genius.
Where would you assess where we are today in beating COVID-19?
Don't touch your nose. We've all seen those videos.
You know, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B cell and T cell immunity. And it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines.
Why is that sad? Nature's doing its own vaccines. Well, the problem is if nature does a vaccine, we can't charge you for it. Also, isn't the reason that African nations didn't have access to the vaccine is because of the refusal to waive patents that you endorsed, by the way?
Well, I think the mainstream media did a reasonably good job.
What about the CDC? Did they do a good job by not publishing the information, by controlling the information, by giving us little pipsqueak tidbits bit of information? You can handle that bit of information. You wouldn't understand it. You're too stupid.
The scale of the misinformation, once you move past the mainstream media, is so wild you almost have to laugh about it.
I don't laugh, though. I just don't fund it.
Are we going to see another pandemic before we are able to beat this one?
Well, we'll have another pandemic.
What time is it? There should be another pandemic.
Do you believe it's possible to prevent the next pandemic?
Say again?
Is it possible to prevent the next pandemic?
Yes, if every country does what Australia did.
All you got to do to avoid pandemics, the information of which seems to be controlled and changes considerably, even in the mainstream media, and some would say especially in the mainstream media, where there's been different times where you couldn't talk about the Wuhan lab leak, different times where you couldn't talk about vaccine efficacy, different times where you couldn't talk about the spread, natural immunity. All you got to do is be in prison for the rest of your life. Is that too much to ask?
Then you wouldn't be calling it a pandemic. That's all.
So what's being suggested there is that we all follow the pretty severe methods that Australia followed. Let's have a look at this. A new study by researchers at Johns Hopkins University reveals lockdowns have little to no effect on COVID-19 mortality. Well, what effect do they have on mental health, other anatomical conditions, the impact it's had on addiction, waiting for operations? I mean, the list just goes on and on. Researchers did find that lockdown orders caused enormous economic and social costs wherever they were implemented. Now, a lot of people have been saying that from the beginning of this pandemic, and there was a time where that couldn't even be openly discussed and was censored. Even if you're as economically privileged as someone like me, you don't suffer in the same way most people do. For them, everyone being locked down Australia style, or everyone dealing with draconian new measures and freezing bank accounts, that doesn't affect someone like Bill Gates. It doesn't affect that class of people. It seems to me sometimes that what's being created is a reality that will advance the interests of the most powerful people in the world, affect the majority of ordinary people. Measures such as lockdowns, controls, mandated procedures, all of this, they float above. Perhaps it's always been like this. It seems that what's being ushered in is a highly stratified society where ordinary people are over-regulated and have less and less access to control through democratic means and have their reality prescribed to them by agencies like the Bill Gates Foundation, the WEF. It's becoming pretty clear that governments do respond to the edicts and ideas and axioms emerging from those organisations. And the only thing that can prevent it is freedom. Your freedom, my freedom, our ability to organise our communities and our amenities according to our will. And people might get it wrong and mistakes might get made and we might disagree with each other. But in order to prevent these kind of minor cultural differences flaring up, we're handing over control on a global scale to a group of people that won't be affected by the regulations that they're ensuring are being introduced. How many times have you seen parties of ultra-rich people not wearing masks while everyone else around them is expected to? You've seen that, right? You've already seen that stuff unfold. So what I'm proposing is a reality that reflects our values, that reflects our differing values. You probably see 1,000 issues in 1,000 different ways from me, but we've got to be allowed to disagree. The alternative is the kind of tyranny that's being ushered in under the auspices of safety. Safe from life, safe from freedom. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Your part of the conversation is absolutely vital. You're educating us all the time with the stuff you said. It's absolutely vital. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you like this video. Have a look at this one or this one. Come and see me live. I'm all over the place. Newcastle, Hull, Scarborough, Glasgow, Plymouth, Bristol. Come and see me live. There's a link in the description if you want to come see me. And if you want to join my mailing list, you can do that too. Stay free.